can be in very alpine terrain, so you have corresponding anchors which are like very exposed, and like even if you get someone to an anchor, it's not that there's a hospital nearby, so you still probably would need to call a helicopter if it's a serious injury on the line, which you might have in even worse terrain. And all of the terrestrial rescue techniques require long periods of hanging in a harness, which is just bad for the medical prognosis, especially compared to how fast the helicopter can get a patient to the hospital. So this led us to the conclusion that a direct rescue of a highline could like drastically improve the medical prognosis for the patient. So we started some research. We weren't the first ones that did this. There was some French guys. I don't know how GMPS, whatever that stands for, but that's like how they're organized. They did like several experiments, but it was just like one experiment. They never followed up on it. Actually was a live rescue from the Martin-Flugrettung in 2012 of a line that was 40 to 50 meters of length. And this was like without any script, like it was just a real flight rescue of a high line. But in order to get helicopter operators to widely adopt this, you would basically need a standard operating procedure that was SOP basically stands for. And for that, there are some regulations. Basically, you have to properly equip, train, and brief your DC HEMS, like your personnel that does the rescue. You have to develop a standard operating procedure, so you actually have to have a written procedure that is in your, like everyone in your operating firm knows, and they all need to know where to find it. And this has to be based on a risk assessment. So you can't just go like, this is the EASA, you can't just go and say, yeah, we have tried something once. They will say, no, that's not enough. You need a proper risk assessment. And then you need your guys that are actually performing the rescue to be experienced, trained, and checked. And they have to have like recent experience. So you can't just train them once and then in 5 years, they will see how they fare in a real situation. Furthermore, the operator basically has to assess, mitigate, and minimize the risk that is associated as far as he can, basically by giving them different procedures or different technical equipment to do the job. And he has to describe these mitigations in order for it to be certifiable. So how would you do this for a highline? The problem here is like, how do you make sure that you didn't forget anything of like any of the big risks? So what you do is you chop the procedure up into phases, and then you look at every system that's involved. If you, for example, helicopter rescue, the long line, which is in helicopter terms is the line between the helicopter and your rescuer, the highline leash, and so on. And then you basically give them functions, and now you go through in every phase, every function can fail. What is the risk associated with this? How bad is it? And how can you mitigate this? And if you do this for even like this set, you will end up with roughly 35, 40 pages of just risk assessment. If you do this, you basically, or we found the 4 most important risks that are basically very serious, or the consequence would be very serious. First is if the patient or the rescuer gets entangled with the backup loops of the highline, because then you basically have bound the helicopter, possibly in a situation that you can't resolve, to the highline, which it doesn't like. You can twist the hoist cable or the long line with the leash, which also results in the helicopter not being able to leave freely. You can get the highline when you are doing the maneuver between the rescue and patient, and it might potentially put load on your rescue equipment. And you could also, like if you are not very careful, you could cut the leash too early or too late, and then you have tension in the highline and it will respond accordingly. But the good thing is all of these can be mitigated. There's like in the 30-something pages document that we have, there is risk mitigation for all of these. And with that, you can basically go and train this. And we did this. We did roughly 30 rounds of rescues of a highline. You can find this video on YouTube, and you can just watch it here. I hope it is with sound. So down there, should be a transcription of what they are saying on the radio. And on the left, you can basically see the phases. Like this is still the preparation phase where the helicopter is just approaching. By the way, the line you're seeing is 122 meters, I think, roughly 100. And now, like in a moment, you will see a second camera that shows the first-person view of the patient, basically. So now the rescuer is trying to grab the patient. And he has to check with the pilot before he can clip anything. He has to check with the pilot if the power levels on the helicopter are good. Now he can clip in the patient, which is not very easy, but everything is basically. And then he has to cut the leash. Okay. So if you look at the time, this was now 2 minutes 40, so for a complete rescue, which is basically the big advantage of this procedure. You just are incredibly fast. I will stop the video. That's just like he will bring Lucas, in this case, back to the anchor, but that's... Yeah. So, of course, after that, we thought, okay, we tried this now. Let's go and discuss this with different helicopter operators. And there is a forum for this called ICAR. And they liked it, but the thing that immediately they came up with was most of them use rescue hoists, which have a thin steel cable. It's 4.7 millimeters. And we, like the thing we flew, we excluded a steel cable. We used a 12.5 millimeter rope because we were afraid that the steel cable might damage the highline. So the next step, logically, was to investigate what happens when the hoist cable basically comes in contact with the highline. And we could do this like in a lab setting. So we teamed up with the mountain rescue team and like the German police. They delivered a original steel cable, and the German mountain rescue team basically has this playing facility, let's call it that way. It has like a climbing wall in the back, and it has like there's 2 helicopters inside that you can like are on a crane, you can move, you can hoist people up and down, and they even have like cable cars and to just try these things. And what you can see here, like we installed the line. It's the maximum that we could fit into this space was like 50-ish meters, 53. The patient is the thing down here, like with the red head and the yellow harness. That's basically, we did up to high because otherwise it would just fall down like every time and damage something. And the thing you see at the side, let me see if I can get a laser pointer. Yeah, this thing over here underneath the title, that is basically 100 kilograms attached to a line scale, and the cable, that's basically the rescuer. Okay, so we tried both polyamide and Dyneema lines, and we tried to find something like what would be the worst case setup. Of course, probably no one will call for a 50-meter length Highline. No one would call a helicopter because it's doable terrestrial, but it gets worse the shorter the Highline gets. We tried 3 kilonewton and 5 kilonewtons of pretension. We had an 80 kilogram patient that was roughly 20% in the line, 20% of the line length from one anchor. And the rescuer is 100 kilograms, which is not uncommon. I mean, they have a ton of gear and are like pretty buff guys and girls. And we tried, because this would be the most dangerous scenario, to get the contact of Highline and host cable like approximately where the leash ring is, within 10 centimeters. Which also is very, like, this is doable in the lab setting outside, like with a helicopter it would be difficult. The helicopter in this scenario, because of the ceiling height of the ZSA that we were in, could only be like placed above like 5 meters above the line. And of course, the worst case would be the helicopter is not like hovering directly above the line, but like overshooting the line. So he's flying actively over the line to the other side where your flight rescuer is not. So it's pulling the flight rescuer into the line. This is a video of polyamide. Like here you see the leash ring. This here in the back is how we measured the distance of the helicopter above the line. We have a backup just so our equipment is ground, and the white rope is basically the leash where the patient is attached to. And let's see. When we move the hoist cable up and down, like just a little bit, you already see damage on the line. And like, so this is just very dangerous. It's not hard to see. We tried the same thing with the Dyneema, which you can see here. It kind of stands up to the damage a little bit longer, but it also fails.
How much movement was there up and down?
A few meters.
A few meters. Like the cable was going up and down a few meters.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, like you in a real scenario, you would not know like how windy it is for the helicopter, so you can't exclude like movements even like meters up and down. Like we experienced these when we were doing the flight tests, and you can't exclude that the helicopter is like above the line or like straight above the line, but like is pulling the rescuer into the line, so that's why we came up with this scenario. So here you see like the test pieces, like, yeah, okay, both polyamide and Dyneema failed. Dyneema even failed at 1 kilonewton pretension, which is extremely to see. The number 2 didn't fail, but in this case, the hoist cable did not like touch the line where the leash ring is. It was like at least half a meter to a meter to the side, and it was moving, so it basically spread the damage over a larger area. Therefore, didn't fail. So it looks pretty bleak that you would get a rescue with a hoist cable. But the thing is, we also tried, if you just clip a climbing rope into the hoist, you can still use the hoist to go up and down. You just like add like 5 meters of or 10 meters of climbing rope at the end. And if you do this, you see that independent of the pretension or the material, it does some damage, but even after excessive movement, like for 2 minutes or more, it did not damage the highline to any point near breaking failure.
How much did it damage the climbing rope?
Nothing. Like on the climbing rope, you can literally see like no damage at all. I would perfectly take that climbing rope and go climbing. Yeah, didn't even care. Okay, so it looks like both polyamide and Dyneema are like critically damaged by the cable if it comes into contact. At least we can't exclude that it will do damage. Tension is higher, it fails faster, which is not very surprising, but it still fails at very low tension. So at this point, we would not recommend a direct hoist rescue. If anyone here is listening and trying to tell this to a helicopter operator, please don't try this. So what are the next steps? The results with the climbing rope looked very, very encouraging. So the next steps for us, we'll talk to helicopter operators again about if they would be fine with a climbing rope or even rappelling from the climbing rope attached to the hoist. And together with them, define a procedure that we can get a hoist-based rescue, because like 95%, like the Austrians are the only ones that frequently fly long line. All the other operators use rescue hoists and only train using rescue hoists. And then, of course, you need a safe training environment, which the mountain rescue team in Germany already has with the playground they have. But you need to test the procedure with an operator in a lab setting, possibly even like in real flight. So if it is possible to do this with an acceptable risk for the machine, like for the helicopter, and like the safety of everyone that's involved, it is actually trainable and it might be adopted by operators. But this is still like, don't take this as like this will be in a few years, like this will still take time. These processes are extremely slow. So what can Highlines do at the site? Of course, they can provide first aid. They can like immediately remove one of the main risks. They can just remove the backup loops, like just around the patient. They don't have to remove all the backup loops, all the Highline. It's just like wherever the patient is on the line. An unconscious patient, of course, in an operator. Because if you have to rescue, like helicopter rescue, a sack of potatoes out of a like very uncomfortable position, this is very hard. It just makes it harder for the rescuer. If it takes like very long because we're very remote for the helicopter to arrive, you could even try to move the patient into a hammock. Like they had no problem like getting him out of the hammock, and it's just more convenient for the patient and like even for the medical prognosis. It's just them hanging in a harness the whole time. Yeah, that's why we were here, basically. And as a conclusion, it does work for a long line, which is just another name for the rope that is clipped into the helicopter and is just a fixed length or can just be rappelled on. It was already analyzed and trained with like 30 rounds and 20-something people with promising results. It still has inherent dangers that need to be trained. So if you twist the high line and the long line of the helicopter and the leash, you might end up with a scenario where the helicopter can't leave, even if it has to. Or talking of the backup loops, if you get backup loops around the foot or around the arm, if it's around the foot, you might not even be able to reach it anymore because it's so far down. And yeah. Just as we're working on like getting a procedure for a hoist-based helicopter rescue. So I know probably it's not surprising to anyone here, but I don't know who's listening, so I still want to say it. Please do not currently rely on helicopter rescue and highlining. They just not prepared for you to do. Any help with this is welcome. So far, it's been just a small group doing this and like trying to organize all the stuff. If you know anyone, any operator, anyone else who wants to take a look into the safety document or like wants to talk to us about what was our experience like, how did we do it, just contact us. We gladly share like everything we have. We also can connect you to the one helicopter crew that already trained this, and there were some that were doing this like 5 or like even more times, so they are somewhat proficient in the procedure. You can just contact any one of us, like either me or Aaron or Lucas. So with that, I hope we can have some exciting discussion about this. I hope that we can get this to work for hoisting helicopter in the future, because it would just be like a great safety addition to the sport. Thanks.
I have 2 questions.
Can you step there?
Yeah. So first thing is like with the hammock. For me, that's just more when if the helicopter comes a bit later, it's harder to extract the person from the hammock.
Yeah, it is, but if you hang in hard,
20 minutes is too long. But like in general for rescues, well, the way we teach rescues, the hammock is only you do one brought the person to the anchor. If you cannot get them over the cliff, you can then get them there, but in the middle of the line, because that's just it brings more complication later.
So what they will immediately do, they will just like, you wouldn't take the person out of the harness or even disattach the leash. They would just cut the hammock.
Okay, so
just as a context, like most of the times when we do helicopter rescues, it's like crash rescues. You just take someone, you throw them into the helicopter, and you get off. Because the one thing that helps the patient is the hospital, and everything else is secondary, of course.
But the second thing was, like, I don't know if you've thought about it or why you rejected this idea, but just if the rescuer comes from above and just clips into the leash ring, and then lift that the webbing.
You would like they were not willing to cut anything that would fly around.
Okay.
Because if it gets in the near of the helicopter, they would just freak out about this.
I understand.
They are already freaked out about Highlines in general.
Yeah.
So for them, it's just a big risk, and everything that's not controllable is even. So if you cut something that has that much tension,
it's not going to go to the helicopter. It's very likely.
It's going to go to the sides, but then what?
Then you have the higher.
Do you know how the wind is there? Like the thing is, for a helicopter crew, anything that can like get close to the rotor is a big danger, and they would want to avoid it. But we thought about to them about this. They would not be comfortable cutting the line. They would do it in the ultimate case if everything else fails, but they would not want to do this.
I find it counterintuitive I find it counterintuitive to expect the highlight to be any further away if you don't cut it. But I mean, of course, the helicopter crew are more experienced being in a helicopter.
So just think about it.
But the thing is, if you take someone off the highline, the only reasonable way the highline could go is closer to the helicopter.
Yeah.
Right? That's the way it moves. It
Yeah.
goes up once the weight is released. So either you bring in another thing or person that can stay on the highline, don't change the highline parameters, or you get the highline away.
Okay.
I find this
You lift the highliner before.
far enough.
Yeah, that's what you do. You always
That's,
lift the highliner until the line is basically at the zero position, whatever you want to.
Yeah.
And then you cut the leash.
Okay.
You don't cut the leash too early or too late.
Yeah.
Because then the highliner would go away. The thing is, like, the line near the leash ring, just think about like the line is now like rapidly accelerating to the side. Just if it wraps around anything, you have an uncontrollable situation.
Yeah,
They will never, like, they will just say, like, no way, we will not do this. We will cut the leash. That's fine if we have lifted like transferred the weight of the patient to the helicopter, then lifted the line, so the line is like just the normal pretension. Then we can cut the leash. everything else is
Okay,
like
and
too
you
uncontrolled.
base that decision on the sort of the force vector of the leash. So you see the leash down, 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 down. Once it's down,
What you try to do is you try to like move, like if you watch closely, the guy who was doing the procedure was like, after he clipped in, he was telling the helicopter to do like 1 meter back, which is roughly the length of your leash, and then up.
okay,
So you would go
away.
The thing is, like, if you do like 1 meter back, then you have a line like roughly here, and here's like all your stuff, and you can like do one sweeping look if anything is entangled. If not, you can cut. Otherwise, you don't. Because as soon as you cut and something is still connected to the island, you're in a bad spot.
So we have questions from the web. Maybe you can turn your microphone so I can turn on. Maybe first tell the people to be that they're able to ask now. Maybe Liam first.
Hello. Thank you for the work. I have two questions. One is about the Highlines and the loops. Since usually loops are so they come back. If you have any of it, the technique off the top of my head, getting this kind of thing, the backup on the main would actually seem to be loops. Maybe you have thought more about that. And the second question is about the low visibility situations. If you have thought anything about that, or helicopters cannot fly, proposal for like big projects and stuff would be some sort of signaling like they have for avalanche rescue, where a helicopter could locate in space the Highliner.
Okay, so for your first question, basically everything that removes the backup loops. The thing is just like the backup loops will flutter in the downwash. The downwash of the helicopters we use were roughly like 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. So they will flutter pretty violently. If you can like just whatever, like tie them off just around the patient. If someone goes out to provide first, to like try to do this. If it's just like 2 meters around the patient, it's already very good. Because everything that is fluttering like right around the patient just for the rescuer creates distraction, and he doesn't know, is it entangled in the harness, maybe on the back where he doesn't see it. So if it's just cleaner, it's just easier for them. It works. You could go out there with a tape and just tape it on the main line. Just don't care. Just as long as it's safely away from the patient.
I think making a knot is also working. Pull the back up, make a knot, and then it's
like anything that works. You can be creative. And now I have to say that I forgot the second. Oh yeah, the low visibility thing. The thing is, human external cargo, which the category that they are doing is called, normally is only flown at good visibility, because they basically the pilot is not like doing all the maneuvering alone, but is basically relying on his rescuer or his hoist operator instructions where to go. And if they have like just a cloud cover or something that is about to get into the spot where they want to get someone out of, they would just say stop, we wait until the weather is in a better shape. They will not go and fly in a low visibility thing, especially not close to something that is basically dangerous to the helicopter and not visible to them. They would just not do this. Like, we can exclude that. So if it's foggy or clouded and you are relying on helicopter rescue, you have a bad spot in the first place. Like, even for just normal things, like someone like skis into a tree, and if it's cloud covered,
Roberto has another question. Can you hear him? No?
I can hear, yeah. We can hear you if that is the question.
Yeah, speaking, two questions. First is speaking of visibility, I find it sort of concerning that you would use helicopter rescues specifically on projects that usually should get signaling in the first place. So has there been some talks or considerations regarding what to do with any signaling lines that might be up?
No, we haven't.
And the second part is, should a second person go and assist the highliner while waiting for the helicopter rescue, if they do out before the rescue, or is it okay to stay on and assist in some form?
So I against anyone else, like that is not the patient or the rescuer being on the line while the rescue is done. The French guys that I've shown in the beginning did with someone like a highliner would go in, then they would like basically get the rescuer to the highliner. The rescuer would clip himself into the highline. Then they would, the two of them would basically do stuff with the patient, back and get the rescuer. You also see in their videos that the highline is not even wearing a helmet, even though like things could definitely fall on his head. And like you just burn through time. Everything that is like less of a risk for the helicopter or the crew or that they have is basically better. If they don't have to check the anchors because they want to clip themselves into the line before doing, then it's less stress for them. Okay, fine. So that's why we opted for the scenario where basically the rescuer never unclips from his connection to the helicopter. He does everything like flying, and this way you also like need minimal time to get the patient. If you have two people on the line, it's just the first question would be like, how would you unload the line and know when it's unloaded? You would need to watch like the harness of the second person and stuff like that. So just keeping it simple, especially in stress rescue scenarios, I would opt for no one else on the line. You can go in before if you know they will need time, or you can even like if you have radio connection to them, tell them, okay, just give us like 3 more minutes for someone to get off the line. But I would not stay on the line if there's a chance of getting off.
Okay. Thank you so much. Jakob, do you have another question? Something?
No, I just wonder if it's interesting, like to comment the accident that was in Italy with the rope swing, because in that case, there were 2 people when the helicopter went for the rescue, and the rescuer took both of them out of the line.
They were hanging way below the line.
Were they? I don't know.
I thought because it's a rope swing, they probably didn't get the patient up the line,
true.
so it was hanging like, I don't know, 50 meters or more under the high line. I don't even know how that would work with a helicopter.
You can clip and cut.
Well, swing in the rescuer, you know. Yeah.
You just have to catch in the swing.
Interesting kind of scenario that should somehow be included in the discussion, right? The rope swing accident on Highlines is an all different challenge.
Yeah, but like let's do it one step at a time.
I'm just saying, like, you will have all these different scenarios anyway, right? From like short to long Highlines, from maybe rope swing and what else? Space net rescues.
You rope swing on the highline, anyways.
Huh?
Rope swing on the highline is a bad idea.
That's main way to go.
Rope swing nowadays. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. That was really awesome having you here with your presentation. Really nice. We got one last presentation for today. Augustin, right?
Oh yeah.
Was you and me on the list, but
So, okay, we're back to this computer. Now we got one last presentation for today. It's going to be a presentation by August. It's a project, long-running project from us. I just want to give you a quick update. It's not going to be a super long presentation.
I always have like 30 meetings of fun. So almost like, okay.
1 second if we can get you here. This one is here, that one's here. Okay. Everybody hear Augusta or me like this? Quick thumbs up.
So I hope nobody needs a break. I'll start straight away. So yeah, I'm going to make a quick presentation about our last publication, most recent publication with the IC Safety Commission. We do experiments on UV for Highline webbings. So yeah, let's go straight into it. The experiments where we exposed a bunch of webbing at this location, Jungfraujoch. It's in Switzerland, not too far from here. It's quite high, so it has high UV exposure. It also has big variation of temperature over the year, which we because like temperature affects so much webbing as well in this range, not as much as UV. Also, most interestingly for us, there was a weather station at the top, so we could get exact UV data from all the time of the experiment. What happened here? So we put 7 webbing types of polyester and polyamide, which represent the most common webbing used at the time this thing was started. So that was already 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, these frames were attached up there, and then some webbings were collected for the next 2 years, like in the first, after a week, after a month, after 3 months, after 6 months, after a year, after 2 years. Then they were brought to Seabird Consulting Labs in Vienna and tested there according to the ISA 41 webbing standard procedure. So with web block with big diameters, not something that you can buy or use on a Highline. I mean, you could use it on a Highline, but and then we will look at the results. But first, we can just look at these webbings. Here you can see the discoloration, and like for so bottom right is red tube, and it's very clear which webbing has been in the sun the most time. It's almost white. But before that, it's actually not so even worse. Like if you look at the blue one, which is Sonic. Yeah, for Sonic, it's really hard to tell. So, like the first thing we can take away from this is some do show discoloration, but not all of them. So, just looking at the color of a webbing is not enough to know its age. Also, one more thing we tested was like there was, so for each data point you here is actually 3 samples, and we take the average of these 3 values. And there was first measurement with webbing before any of the tests happened, and there was another measurement with other piece of webbing which had been stored in the dark, not exposed to the UV, just to see the difference after a bit over 2 years of just being stored. And we can see the difference, well, except for core 2, which lost quite like 3 kilonewtons. It looks quite a lot, but everything else, like some of them, the average was even higher than. So it's just error of just the number of samples, probably. So this to say that the age of webbing shouldn't be calculated just from the day you bought it. You can store it for a long period of time without being too worried about it. But then, if you put it to UV, then interesting start to happen. So, what do we have here? We have the forces that were the remaining breaking strength of the webbing for each type of webbing. So, we have in blue colors, it's the webbings made of polyamide, and in orange red is the webbing made of polyester. And there's quite a difference between them, is that the orange and red, they lose a lot of strength at the start and then it plateaus, and the blue ones, it just keeps going down. So polyamide webbing keep losing strength over time. Polyester webbing do it less in our experiments, and as you can see here, we don't have that many data points. Like after a year, we have very little. But the most interesting also, and what's also interesting here is you can see this is not just the number of days exposed, it's the cumulative UV exposure. So if you just take the number of days, it doesn't. The curves don't match. So when you put the UV exposure instead of the number of days, then you have really you really have nice curves. Otherwise, everything is shifted a bit, and so the data matches really that UV exposure is the important thing, not just the number of the time it was exposed. We're going to be doing more tests on that. So let's look a bit more into those strengths. So now we have everything, but it's all the same curves, but instead of having just the force, it's the force in percentage of the day zero. And here it's quite clear that all the polyester webbing behaving kind of the same way compared to the day zero, and all polyamide and nylon webbing behave kind of in the same way as well. So these curves are just regression curves calculated automatically by Google Sheets, except the X, which for those who don't know, it's from Slackline.de. This one lost much less strength compared to the other polyamide webbing, and it's not because it started with higher strength, it's not because it started with lower strength. Like, we don't really know why. The one option would be that it was made from different fibers of nylon, different type of fiber, different treatment. But yeah, this is really a bit inconclusive in that sense. So we have more tests coming as well. Yeah, and from before we go further into the recommendation, we must talk about the continuous tandem highline main and backup failure incident. So I don't know if you've heard about it. I think most people in the Highline community have seen that, and it's quite recent. There we made an ISA report as well. You can read it. It's on the ISA website, and it was published on social media quite recently. But what happened basically is that there were two people in one highline, and one of them fell. It created a peak of tension, and then the main line broke. And as they were falling, the impact broke also the backup webbing. And these webbings were moonwalk, which is a high. So not one of those we tested. It's with fibers of dyneema and other high-tech things. And it starts at 31 kilonewton. On a fall like this, the forces probably didn't go above 10 kilonewton. But the webbings had quite some lifetime. So the orange one, this was orange at some point, had 500 days of exposure in the American Southwest. So it's a place where which has high values compared to, for example, Europe. And the main line had 300 days of exposure, around 300 days of exposure too. From this, they collected the other webbings that were in this setup, and some break tests. So they have all different histories, but you can see that the orange, it was all orange moonwalk backup and all black moonwalk, and you can see all the break test values, like 3 samples for each section, and some of them break as low as 9.24 kilonewton. This was, I think, it was not done in a whale, but normal block. Quite concerning. So after seeing this, we revised our webbing lifetime recommendation. That's in the webbing standard, and also it should be included in the manufacturer's manual. But so polyamide and polyester basically we had before, and this was kind of corroborated by the UV test. So these recommendations are only in terms of UV damage. If a webbing gets dropped into acid, then don't use it anymore. If a webbing is cut halfway through, don't use it anymore. But if you don't see any more damage than just UV damage, then this is the lifetime recommendation of webbings. So 100 for webbing of type C class, which is above 22 kilonewton for polyester and polyester. Yeah, have this. But then what happens after this report is that we have removed all recommendation for our high-tech webbing because we cannot make a recommendation, we don't know. There's also one more thing that makes it hard to make a recommendation like this, is that this says 180 days of exposure, but as we've seen, it's not the number of days, it's in summer in Europe, you have much more UV than in winter in Europe, but also here is a map of the UV level in different countries. So yeah, here we're here in Switzerland. We're in the region with the lowest thing on the map. But places like southwest US has is like close to Mexico. It has a lot of higher values. Which is double the amount of UV, and then places like Peru, Brazil, or also high mountains places, it gives a different number, like different numbers. We are working on something to help people understand how much UV is in their countries, but it's also one of those projects where we need more help. And if people are motivated to do that, contact us. So right now, I mean, like as early as yesterday evening, we are preparing webbings for a new round of tests. So we have high-tech webbings in this round of tests from different manufacturers, different kind of constructions of these webbings, different kind of fibers. Test as much as possible. So we have it's going to be over a year. It's going to be in a place which has not super high UV intensity. It's just on a roof right next to here. And we're going to be testing also other materials. So as I said, it's starting now. So we're going to be trying to set up the frames for these tests, and then all the samples are going to be brake tested as they're just in the building here where we have a brake test machine. There's probably room for more webbing if you have like it needs to be, or other materials. So we are also testing a Dyneema 12 grade because it's used a lot now in highlining for connections, for extenders, and
also climbing slings. Actually, I just talked to Top Rope that offers here their facility, and they will give us lots of different climbing slings to test as well.
Nice.
Most necessarily, I think also the Dyneema slings, which will be very interesting.
Yeah, and this is starting now, and hopefully in a year, next day, if the safety event is the same time next year, then the results won't be in yet, but we'll have the results soon after. That's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions. Yes, there is questions.
Maybe step over here quickly. That's easier.
Thanks, Augustin. Yeah, I have a few questions. The first one is, you made the test by considering the parameter of cumulative exposure.
Yeah.
Are you planning to compare, for example, two webbings, two identical webbings with the same cumulative exposure, but one, for example, will be exposed two times longer than the other, with 2 times less? Yeah.
So we're trying to do that by exposing like webbing for 6 months in winter versus 1 month in summer, and that all of those things it's in the plan.
Okay. Second point. You made the distinction in between polyester and polyamide, but you're surely aware that polyester is a polyester, and those are always the same material, but polyamide is a family of.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Difference, and for sure, it's like in Oven Spider, we are concerned. Maybe you've heard about the boom, the boom permarig.
Yeah, I've maybe heard of it.
Really loud values, and this is so far we are concluding that it's clearly due to a quality of polyamide that is really strong when brand new, but it's decreasing faster than the other qualities, for example.
We have some boom test as well.
It is. This is something maybe you should only make the category polyester and polyamide, but polyester and the different polyamides categories.
For the certification, you mean?
Yes, for the certification, even for you if you want to compare, because for example in between 6 and PS66, when brand new the webbings are looking the same and not the same breaking strength, but it's not aging the same. It's like totally different materials in behavior.
Yeah, the one thing we have as an issue with that is that we need to rely on the manufacturer to tell us which fiber they're using, and the manufacturer needs to rely on their producers.
It is, yes. For us, it has been a long study to go back to that. We are able to know the quality of the polyamide, and let's just keep in mind that there are several different specific polyamides, and it's important to make the difference.
Yeah.
I guess it can make sense to have like certain polyamides being accepted for Highline webbing and others not. So you say, okay, if you know PA66 is okay for Highlines, but PA6 is not good, or PA12, I don't know what else is existing. I think it makes sense to look at the numbers, to ask manufacturers what is the nylon exactly they're using. You get the numbers and saying, okay, this seems to work, so this is fine, and others are just not accepted yet in the standard. So if you bring out like a new nylon with like another polyamide which is not proven to be strong, you need to make the tests and you need to get the UV study done to show that this is actually like lasting for a long time.
It is, for example, the boom. I would not say that it's a dangerous webbing, but for long-term permarig, it can become dangerous. So you are offering some, suggesting some number of days of exposure, and I think this number should be different, just depending on the webbing. That's all.
Yeah.
Last point we will discuss separately.
I have a follow-up to this. If we are doing this, I have a follow-up to this. If we conduct this new series of studies and we know the exact amount of radiation that has hit the fibers, can we maybe at the same period of time do some tests with artificial UV radiation to maybe conduct this kind of tests in labs in the future? So manufacturers have the ability to just say we need this kind of light source to test in the lab, how in a way in much quicker iterations.
So yeah, that's really related to the question that Florent was asking at the start, that if you have the same UV exposure but in the so that's why we're testing this with summer versus winter. Then UV labs are a bit expensive.
Also, they're all different. That's another problem. There's different machines and they have different lamps and.
Yeah.
you can do it yourself, but again, there's many different qualities of lamps, like wavelengths that you can expose it to. So there's huge variation
Sure,
there.
but maybe we can talk about this in here and just maybe
Yeah.
find one kind of radiation source that we can agree on.
How does that relate to the real life? That's in the next.
Yes,
That's part of the
experiment.
experiment. Of the experiment is we check how much it is UV, then we can check in a UV lab.
Yeah.
That's much faster to do, so we don't need to plan it a year in advance.
And this has been done in the climbing industry, or tried in the climbing industries in the last 20, 30 years, and they haven't managed. It's not in any standard, it's not included in anything. That already tells us a little bit something about how complicated this is. So, I mean, we're definitely going to try these. We have been in contact with labs since years, but we just never managed to get affordable tests going. That was kind of the main challenge. But yeah, you can do them yourselves, we know that. And do these UV lamps, UV testing facilities.
And we are doing some UV testing, just like you in the same.
Yeah.
And we are planning to make also some long-term UV tests, some accelerated UV tests on UV lamps.
Yeah.
So maybe yes, we can keep in touch.
Good.
We have one question here, whether it will make a big difference in what was the name? Whether it would be a difference in tension lines versus just lines on frames. Because the webbing will be more stretched out, maybe the core will be more exposed.
So we're that's like we want to have part of the frames that we're using up there which have some tension.
Okay, there's one last question. Robin online. Last question of the day. Robin, go ahead. Robin, are you still here? Can you hear us? Your microphone is... Yeah. Wait.
I had a question concerning the... you talked about rain also, and from a chemistry point of view, if you want to break polymers, you need UV and you need water to break bonds between the polymers. So did you stop that, and is it taken in account also?
We are not yet putting things on. Like if you add more factors to it, it just becomes. Like okay, let's say that this way. For the experiments that we've done already, trying to take into account the temperature, the humidity, all these other factors, it didn't make a difference. Didn't make curves fit better to a regression, or so. UV is I think UV is really the main cause of damage. The rain, it does have an effect. Humidity has an effect when the webbing is tension. So that's actually like if you have tension plus rain, and then the cycles of then that might damage cycle of humidity with tension. If you have no tension, it doesn't do anything, I think, for webbings. But yeah, there's so many parameters that we could test. We are trying to keep the study manageable. But maybe we can do something where you just webbing in tension, and put water on it, and then you dry it, and you put water on it, and you do that 700 times.
The sleeping loading, just a sprayer.
Wait, you have to turn on the microphone quickly. There. Sorry, you have to
accelerate the process than only UV and intention, like you said.
Sorry, say again. Can you repeat? We have microphone problems with too many here.
Yeah, my point was UV plus water is the perfect equilibrium to break polymers, and intention, as you said. So, yeah, I think this could be really interesting to see if the successive UV and rain intention could really accelerate this process?
Okay, something that against this is actually that the most extreme reductions in braking strength we've seen mostly from South America, so from central Brazil near the equator. They have high humidity, but they, for example, don't have rain. So yeah, this makes it super complicated, the whole issue.
I mean, I guess like rain is not the problem because during rain it's not sunny usually. In most cases, so it's the problem like in the morning, I guess. It's like there's humidity on the line, everything is soaked, the sun is coming on, and then each day the line is like in full sun exposure, drying off for half an hour. We have half an hour of like wet webbing with like direct light on. I think that's the issue, or like rain and afterwards sun again. And I think that's like in Brazil more the case. If there's a thunderstorm coming, it's clearing up again, and there's like sun again on it. So I think it's much more often happening if the line is drying out in sun conditions than here in Europe, where it's like either like a day for the whole day, so it's like the line is soaking wet for 3 weeks, but almost no UV on it. So maybe that's actually a good point.
So maybe we can leave that for when we do actually test in the weathering lab with UV lamps and controllable humidity. It's not possible. It's beyond what we can do at the moment, I think. But that concludes the presentation.
Yes, thanks a lot, Augustin.
Thank you, Tom, for all.
Sure. So this presentation concludes today's safety event. This afternoon we will be offline and have some program going on here. For tomorrow we start again at 9:30 in the morning with some presentations on accidents. So make sure to join, and we wish you a nice rest of the day. Thanks a lot for being at our ISA safety event. Bye. Bye.